Welcome back to our channel, where we bring classic stories to life. Today, we're diving into a touching tale by T.S. Arthur, An Angel in Disguise. It's a story that asks us to look beyond appearances and find the good hidden within. Our story opens on a somber note in a small village. A woman, known for her struggles with idleness and drinking, has died. She collapsed right on the doorstep of her own dilapidated home, leaving behind her 3 young children. For years, she had been an outcast, looked down upon by almost everyone in the village. But death has a way of changing perspectives. As the news of her passing spread, the anger and scorn that people once felt for her began to melt away, replaced by a wave of pity and sadness. The villagers who had once denounced her now spoke in hushed, compassionate tones. They recognized the shared humanity that connected them all, even to this woman they had so easily judged. Soon, a small procession of neighbors made their way to the old rundown hut where she and her children lived. It was a place that offered little more than basic shelter from the elements. Some brought clean clothes to prepare the mother for a proper burial. Others came with food for her children, who were hungry and now completely alone. There were 3 of them. John, the eldest, was a strong boy of 12. He was old enough and capable enough to start working, perhaps on a local farm. Then there was Kate, a bright and energetic girl around 10 or 11. People thought that with the right guidance, she could grow up to be quite clever and resourceful. But the youngest child, little Maggie, was in a truly heartbreaking situation. 2 years prior, Maggie had a terrible accident. She fell from a window, injuring her spine so severely that she had been bedridden ever since. She couldn't move on her own, relying entirely on her mother to lift her, to carry her, to care for her every need. Now, with her mother gone, Maggie was utterly helpless. With the mother's burial being arranged, the villagers turned their attention to the most pressing issue. What is to be done with the children? The community couldn't simply abandon them. The dead, as they say, are beyond our care, but the living, especially children, are a responsibility that cannot be ignored. After some discussion, a plan began to form. A local farmer, Mr. Jones, talked it over with his wife and decided he would take in John. He figured that without the negative influence of his mother, John could thrive and become a good farmhand. Another villager, Mrs. Ellis, had been looking for a young girl to help around her house. She decided it would be a charitable act to take in Kate, even though Kate was still too young to be of much real help for a few years. So, homes were found for John and Kate. It seemed like a practical solution. John would have a place to work and live, and Kate would have a roof over her head and a chance to learn useful skills. The villagers felt they were doing the right and honorable thing, providing for the 2 older, able-bodied children. But this arrangement left one crucial question unanswered. A question that hung heavy in the air, a question no one seemed eager to address. What about Maggie? What would become of the little girl who couldn't walk, who couldn't even sit up on her own? She was seen as a burden, a child who would require constant care with no prospect of ever being able to contribute. No one stepped forward for her. She was too much of a responsibility, too much of a challenge. The villagers, so quick to offer charity to John and Kate, were silent when it came to Maggie. As the day came to a close and the other children prepared to go to their new homes, Maggie was left behind in the desolate hut. She lay on her small, worn-out bed, alone with her grief and fear. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room. The neighbors who had come to help had all departed, their duties seemingly fulfilled. The door was closed, and Maggie was left in the growing darkness, a forgotten child in an empty house. It seemed as though her fate was sealed, destined to be sent to the poorhouse, a grim and lonely prospect for any child, let alone one as fragile as her. But just as all hope seemed lost, the story takes an unexpected turn. One man, a wheelwright named Joe Thompson, hadn't been able to get the image of the little girl out of his mind. While everyone else saw a burden, Joe saw a helpless child in desperate need of love. Against the advice of his neighbors and likely his own wife, Joe made a decision that would change everything. He returned to the hut, walked over to Maggie's bedside, and spoke to her with a kindness she hadn't heard all day. He gently lifted her into his arms, wrapped her in a clean quilt, and carried her out of the shadows of her old life and into the night. This single act of compassion sets the stage for the rest of our story. Joe Thompson brought Maggie into his own home, not knowing what his wife would say or how they would manage. He just knew he couldn't leave her behind. And that is where we will pause for today. This is the moment an angel, in the form of a sick and helpless child, enters the home of a simple craftsman. What happens next? How will Joe's wife react? And how will this small, fragile girl change the lives of everyone she meets? Join us next time as we continue with T.S. Arthur's An Angel in Disguise. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for more classic stories.